First impressions can be dangerous, but when power walks in wearing a hoodie, it makes people say the quiet part out loud. Let us know in the comments section below, have you ever been judged too quickly? Tisha Underwood stood at the sliding glass doors of the Bexley Talent Group headquarters, her reflection cast faintly in the spotless surface. Her hoodie was gray, oversized. Her sneakers were black and plain, nothing loud. Her jeans slightly faded. She blended into the city crowd just fine, but it wasn't the city crowd she was walking into. She had a name badge clipped to her hoodie. Letitia Yu. Nothing too formal, just a borrowed version of her own name. No last name, no billionaire shine, just another applicant for a job that didn't exist. Tisha let the glass doors whisper open in front of her and stepped inside the sleek lobby. She paused only for a breath, soaking in the space. It was designed to feel powerful. Marble floors, high ceilings, furniture that looked like it had been chosen more for Instagram than comfort. Everything about it screamed, "We decide your worth here." And in that moment, Tisha's smile curved just slightly at the edge. Behind the reception desk sat a woman who didn't even try to hide her once-over glance. Eyes flicked from hoodie to face to shoes and back up again. "You lost?" the receptionist asked, not lifting her hands from the keyboard. Tisha looked at her calmly. "I'm here for the 11:30. The receptionist blinked, processing the hoodie again as if it were offensive to her entire desk setup. "Name?" "Letitia Underwood." There was a long pause, then a curt nod. The receptionist pointed to a waiting area with velvet chairs that didn't look like they liked being sat in. "Have a seat. Someone will be with you." Tisha thanked her and walked over, sitting softly like she didn't want to wake the walls. No one else was there, just muted jazz playing overhead and the click of heels from someone deeper inside the office. Across the room, behind glass doors, a figure paced. High-heeled, pencil skirt, long black braids twisted into a tight bun that added height to an already commanding presence. This was Geneva Marsh, head of recruitment for Bexley Talent Group, and not a woman who liked surprises, especially ones in gray hoodies. Geneva had seen the application come through. She'd skimmed it because the resume was empty, practically blank. It didn't have school names, it didn't have references, just skills. The kind that made her suspicious. Knows JavaScript, Python, R, C++, experience with AI and predictive analytics, founder-level experience, and yet no LinkedIn, no photos, no social trails. Just a New York City mailing address and a gene. It reeked of fake. She hadn't wanted to do the interview, but something about the name tugged at her. Underwood. Like that name had passed through her desk once before. Maybe a client, maybe a founder. It was irritatingly familiar. Still, she'd give this Letitia 5 minutes, out of courtesy. Then she could move on to real talent. Geneva snapped open the glass door, heels clicking with purpose. "Letitia?" Tisha stood. The look Geneva gave her was sharp and unreadable. Tisha matched it with something quieter, softer but solid, not challenging, but not apologizing either. They walked together to a small interview room with a table that looked like it came with a rule book. Once they were seated, Geneva's posture settled into performance mode. Back straight, shoulders proud, pen resting between elegant fingers. "So, tell me about yourself." Tisha rested her forearms on the table, relaxed. "Sure. I'm a systems thinker. I like building things from scratch. I've been freelancing in data analytics and back-end infrastructure for a while. I'm ready to move into something more structured." Geneva raised an eyebrow. "No college listed on your resume?" "Nope. No companies, just freelance." Tisha nodded once. "No portfolio. No GitHub. No references." Tisha met her eyes. "That's right." Geneva laughed once. Not mean, not quite, but it wasn't kind either. "You'll understand if I say this doesn't exactly inspire confidence." "I do understand," Tisha replied, her voice steady, even a little warm. Geneva leaned forward a fraction. "If I'm honest with you, this looks like a prank, like someone is testing how gullible we are." Tisha tilted her head slightly. "Would that be a bad thing?" Geneva blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" "If you were being tested," Tisha continued, "would that be a problem?" Geneva's expression hardened. "This is a professional recruiting firm." "Exactly," Tisha said softly, and then leaned back into the chair. Her hoodie shifted slightly, revealing a sliver of gold chain around her neck, something expensive, but quiet, something you had to notice. Geneva did. Her eyes flicked to it and back. Silence fell between them like a dropped pen. Geneva tapped her pen once, then set it down. "Well," she said crisply, "let's start with a simple question. If you had to design a hiring funnel for a fintech startup looking to triple in size in under 6 months, what's your first move?" Tisha smiled. "You don't start with resumes," she said. "You start with the algorithm." And just like that, the game changed. Geneva sat back in her chair, just a little. Something in Tisha's tone, in her calm, in her knowing. It felt like a switch had flipped, but Geneva didn't know yet what it connected to. She flipped her notebook open. "All right, let's talk systems then." As the conversation slid into terms and frameworks, Geneva found herself oddly pulled in. Tisha spoke with ease, layering concepts with clarity. No jargon, no pretension, just clean, sharp logic. Ideas stacked like code, each one with intention, each one building toward something invisible but weighty. By the end of the 30 minutes, Geneva was gripping her pen tighter than before. She didn't want to admit it, but this woman, this hoodie-wearing enigma, had run circles around every other candidate that week. Still, she wouldn't be fast-tracked. She wouldn't be that easily impressed. Geneva ended the meeting with a clipped nod. "Well, thank you for your time." Tisha stood, gathering nothing, because she'd brought nothing. "Thank you. Someone will be in touch." Tisha paused, one hand on the doorknob. She looked back. "I'm sure they will." Then she left Geneva sitting there in a glass box of her own design, watching the door slowly close behind a woman she'd misjudged, and still didn't understand. He said, "Proceed with the full script of Act 1, Section 2. It should have a minimum of 1050 words. There should be no titles inside the script, just make the narration straight, but there should be the act number, section number, and title above the script." ChatGPT said, Act 1, Section 2, The Culture Unmasked. It didn't take long for the whispers to start, the kind that slithered across polished floors and glass partitions, passed between text messages and eye rolls, all directed at the woman in the hoodie. Tisha Underwood sat alone in the break room now, waiting for what they called the second round, a panel-teal interaction meant to simulate how well a candidate fit the team. The space had all the artificial charm of a Pinterest board: exposed brick wallpaper, matte-deck appliances, Edison bulbs hanging too low. It wanted to feel modern, youthful, but the air inside told the truth. It was cold, controlled, full of pecking orders and silent hierarchies. A young intern passed by the doorway and lingered just a second too long, her brows drawing together in curiosity. Tisha met her gaze and smiled. The girl turned quickly and disappeared. At the far end of the office, Geneva Marsh paced behind a conference room door, speaking low and fast to a man with square shoulders and a tight jaw. Bryce Anders, the agency's director of client strategy. Bryce had a jawline like a news anchor and eyes that scanned people like he was always looking for the lie. "Are we seriously letting her move to second round?" he asked, voice low but impatient. Geneva didn't blink. She handled the technical questions better than any of the final round candidates we've had in months. Bryce scoffed. "Geneva, come on. She walked in here looking like she rolled out of a subway seat." "She's competent," Geneva said sharply, "and if you ask me, more than that." Bryce folded his arms. Clients don't buy mystery genius. They want someone they can point to on a pitch deck. She doesn't even have a resume. She has more than a resume, Geneva muttered. She has the answers. Still, Bryce didn't budge. Look, you want to keep her in the running? Fine. But I'm sitting in on this next one, and if she can't handle the fire, don't say I didn't warn you. Geneva said nothing, just turned and opened the door. Minutes later, Tisha was led into the conference room with its long oak table and uncomfortable white chairs, where 5 team members were already seated. Geneva and Bryce took the 2 seats at the head, like twin bookends, keeping the conversation tightly bound. Tisha took the seat offered to her at the middle of the table. She didn't seem nervous, but she didn't seem careless either. She just looked ready. The introductions were swift and impersonal. "Let's jump in," Bryce said, leaning back with hands folded. "Hypothetical scenario. You're leading recruitment for a fast-scaling client. You're told diversity's important, but the short list is stacked with Ivy League grads, mostly white, mostly male. What do? Tisha didn't hesitate. Ask why the short list looks like that. Then trace the bias backward to where it entered the process. And if the hiring manager pushes back? Then I know they're not serious about diversity. They're serious about appearances. The room was still. Bryce raised his eyebrows. So you'd challenge the client? I'd reframe the challenge, Tisha said. Sometimes you don't need to confront the ego. You just need to ask better questions. Someone near the end of the table chuckled under their breath. Lindsay, an account manager who'd been quiet until now. I like her, she murmured, half joking, but half sincere. Bryce leaned forward slightly. What if they say you're overstepping? I'd ask if doing the job well is overstepping. That one landed. Geneva watched as 2 of the junior team members exchanged glances, not sarcastic ones, not mocking, curious, intrigued. But Bryce wasn't done. Okay, let's move off theory, he said, adjusting the cuff of his blazer. Tell me something you've built, something real, tangible. Tisha considered that, then said, 2 years ago, I wrote a small script that matched startup founders to freelance developers based on code language, time zone, and collaboration style. It ran off a public data set and some survey inputs. It scaled fast. What happened? It broke. I didn't throttle the queries. Then I rebuilt it, added a feedback loop, made it leaner. And where is it now? Sold the code to a boutique accelerator. They use it internally. Bryce gave a non-committal nod. But it was clear he didn't expect that answer. The next question came from Geneva. Tell me what you see when you look at this office. The shift was subtle, but Tisha caught it. Geneva was testing the observer behind the algorithms. Tisha looked around, slowly, thoughtfully. I see glass, she said. Literal transparency, but not emotional transparency. I see hierarchy disguised as openness. I see that no one here looks tired, which means either the culture rewards burnout or people hide when they're overwhelmed. Geneva blinked. That last line felt uncomfortably close to home. I also see a company with good intentions, but intentions don't write policy. This time the silence was longer. Bryce didn't try to fill it. Geneva finally said, Thank you. We'll be in touch shortly. Tisha stood, looking forward to it. As she left the room, the 5 team members sat still, quiet. Lindsay was the first to speak. I'd work under her, she said, without irony. Bryce shook his head slowly. I don't know what she's playing at, but there's something off. Geneva tapped her fingers on the table. Or maybe what's off is what we've normalized. Out in the hallway, Tisha moved past the rows of framed awards and cheerful photos from team offsites. People kayaking, people sipping cocktails on rooftops, all dressed in variations of the same. She stopped near the elevator, where a wide window overlooked the skyline. Below, the city pulsed forward, Thousands of stories unfolding in every direction, none of them clean, none of them linear. She reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out her phone. One notification was waiting. Building security system, facial match confirmed. 4th floor surveillance active. She smiled, just a little. Then the elevator dinged, and the next part of her plan moved forward. A buzzing silence had settled over the Bexley Talent Group offices. The kind of silence that meant someone was talking, but not in front of you. Behind you. About you. By now, everyone on the 4th floor had heard about the woman in the hoodie. Tisha Underwood had become a story. Not a candidate, not a peer, a rumor. She didn't even have a portfolio. Geneva said she was sharp, but like, how sharp? I heard she challenged Bryce to his face. That last part wasn't true, but it felt true enough that no one questioned it. Tisha had left the building an hour ago. The front desk clerk swore she didn't take the elevator down, said she walked right into the stairwell without a word. And that was weird, because the lobby camera didn't catch her coming out at all. Like she'd vanished into the walls. Geneva Marsh stood alone in her office, hands folded across her chest, staring at the message on her screen. It wasn't an email. It wasn't even internal. It was a video file, anonymous sender. The subject line, "Before you decide." She clicked play. The footage showed the break room dim, quiet. Tisha was sitting at the table with her back to the camera, sipping from a paper cup. She wasn't speaking. She was listening. Across from her, 2 employees, Evan and Carla, were huddled over their phones, chuckling between bites of breakfast sandwiches. "I'm just saying, that hoodie? Like, was that a dare?" Evan laughed. Carla shrugged. "Maybe she's one of those people who thinks talent matters more than presentation." "Oh, so a rebel," Evan smirked. "God, I'd love to see Bryce's face. You know he hates unbranded energy." They both laughed. Carla added, $10 says she won't make it past today." The footage zoomed slightly. Tisha's face stayed calm, still. She didn't flinch, didn't defend herself. She just let them talk. And when they finally stood and left, she leaned forward, tapped her phone twice, and put it back in her pocket. Geneva paused the video. Her stomach twisted, not because of what was said, but because she knew. She knew that this kind of thing happened every day in that building. Little cuts, little jokes. Nothing worth an HR complaint, but enough to choke out real talent before it could breathe. She closed the video. Then she opened another. This one was inside the conference room, the group interview. Bryce asking if Tisha would challenge a client. The part that wasn't visible in the room. Bryce shaking his head at Geneva, mouthing, "This is ridiculous." Tisha didn't react. But the camera caught something else. Lindsay, the account manager, slipping her phone under the table and starting a voice memo. Then tapping it off less than 2 minutes later. Just after Tisha said, "You don't start with resumes, you start with the algorithm." Geneva closed the file. Her heart was pounding now, but not out of fear, out of clarity. Something had shifted, not just around Tisha, inside Geneva herself. She opened her desk drawer, pulled out her phone, and scrolled to a contact labeled "Private Line." She hesitated, then put the phone down. Across the city, Tisha walked into a wide glass elevator at a completely different building, one that bore her name, whether anyone knew it or not. Underwood Strategies. The space was minimalist and bright. Warm wood floors, black matte fixtures, real plants, not a single fake smile on the wall. The receptionist, a sharp-eyed older woman named Renee, nodded at her as she stepped out of the elevator. "Everyone's ready." Tisha gave her a soft smile. "Thanks, Renee." She walked into the war room, where 3 people were already seated at a large round table. Her team, small, elite, all handpicked. Marcus, former data engineer at a unicorn startup, now her operations lead. Joelle, her longtime strategist with a background in behavioral economics. Aaron, a quiet genius in cybersecurity, who never wore the same hoodie twice. They all looked up as she entered. Joelle grinned. Well, Tisha sat. They're exactly who we thought they were. Evan and Carla, Marcus asked. Checked all the boxes, she replied. Bryce, too. He's the same guy who ghosted that female founder last year after she asked for equity transparency. Joelle tapped her pen against her lip. You think Geneva's in on it? Tisha paused. No. I think she's stuck in it. There's a difference. Aaron slid a tablet across the table. Got the full capture. Facial recognition confirmed. Building's internal system logged her access as guest Letitia Yu. She never connected to Wi-Fi, but our proxy caught everything from her burner. Tisha looked over the screen, scanning it with quick precision. How's the narrative shaping? She asked. Joelle leaned forward. Viral moment potential is high, but we have to be careful. You drop this all at once and it looks like revenge. It's not revenge, Marcus said. It's reform. Exactly, Tisha replied. She looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows. From here, she could see the city laid out in angles and glass. It was beautiful and broken and full of people trying to move through it without being erased. I'm not here to shame anyone, she said. I'm here to redesign the system they think is working. Joelle nodded slowly. So, what's next? Tisha turned back to them, her eyes sharp now. We prepare for tomorrow. Aaron raised an eyebrow. You're going back? I'm not done yet. Marcus whistled low. You're sure they won't recognize you? They won't see me until I show them who I am. She stood, pulling the same gray hoodie back over her head. The chain beneath it glinted in the light. Outside, the clouds began to shift, letting streaks of golden light pour between the buildings. A new day was coming, and Tisha Underwood was about to change everything that came after it. Bryce arrived early. Earlier than usual. It wasn't out of discipline or drive. It was control. After yesterday's anomaly, a hoodie-wearing ghost with sharp words and no LinkedIn, he needed to re-establish the rules of the room, reset the tone, remind everyone who really steered the wheel. He passed by the receptionist with a clipped nod, ignoring her polite "good morning." His shoes echoed against the tile as he made his way through the office, flicking on lights that the smart system hadn't yet caught. But something felt off. It wasn't anything loud, just a whisper in the fabric of the place. Like the walls had shifted a few inches while no one was looking, like they were waiting. He reached the conference room and stopped short. The table had been rearranged, subtly. Instead of its usual long stretch with one dominant head seat, it was now rounded, centered, democratic. On the table was a folder with a sticky note. Do not move. Wait for Geneva. Bryce rolled his eyes and sat. Geneva was late. Unusual. She wasn't one to make people wait, especially not him. But before he could pick up his phone, she walked in. She wasn't carrying a tablet. She wasn't wearing her usual navy blazer. She looked different. Not unprofessional, just stripped down. Simpler. More real. Morning, she said. Not cold, not warm, just steady. What's this? He asked, gesturing to the folder. You'll see. A few other team members filed in. Lindsay, Carla, Evan. The rest trickled in slower, whispering, sensing something. Once everyone had taken a seat, Geneva stood. Her palms rested lightly on the table's surface. We're having a special guest this morning, she said. Carla blinked. Evan frowned. Bryce sat back, unimpressed. She's a client. She's not a client, Geneva said. She's the reason we have clients. And then the door opened. Tisha Underwood stepped in. Same hoodie, same chain, but this time she carried a presence no one could ignore. Even if they didn't know why, they felt it. The energy in the room changed. Bryce stood slowly. You again? Tisha smiled, walking calmly to the center of the room. She didn't look around. She didn't have to. Everyone was already watching her. No alias today, she said gently. No pretend interviews. My name is Tisha Underwood. I'm the founder of Underwood Strategies, and I own this company. For one suspended breath, no one moved. Then Bryce laughed. It wasn't a real laugh. It was hollow and tight, like it was trying to push the truth away with sound. This is a joke, right? He said, looking to Geneva. She's not serious. Geneva's face didn't change. She's completely serious, she said, and she's completely right. Tisha turned slightly, finally letting her eyes scan the room. I didn't come here yesterday to test you. That's not my game. I came here to see the company I invested in. You invested in? Carla echoed, stunned. Tisha nodded. 2 years ago, I acquired a quiet majority of shares under a different entity. I let the existing leadership operate as normal. Watched, waited, trusted. But trust doesn't last without transparency. She placed a tablet in the middle of the table. The screen lit up with a single headline. Bexley Talent Group to rebrand under new leadership. Effective immediately, Tisha continued, this company is being reorganized from the top down. I've seen enough of the patterns, the unspoken hierarchies, the brushed-off concerns. The brilliant minds silenced because they didn't look the part. She turned to Geneva. You get it. That's why I'm offering you the position of CEO. Gasps rippled around the table. Geneva looked stunned but not confused, not hesitant. She nodded slowly, almost reverently. Thank you. Bryce stood, arms raised slightly. Hold on. This is outrageous. You're just, what, firing the board? Replacing the entire structure because you didn't like how an interview felt? No, Tisha said calmly, her eyes meeting his. I'm holding people accountable for a system they've been benefiting from while pretending they're just doing their jobs. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Even. Carla, you remember the break room? They froze. I didn't record you, she added. But your own cameras did. I don't need to shame you. I just want you to ask yourselves why someone sitting in the same room as you became invisible the second they didn't fit your mold. Evan looked down. Carla's throat tightened. Bryce's face flushed. You don't belong here. No, Tisha said, stepping closer to him. You don't. And then Geneva did something unexpected. She took out a document from the folder Bryce had ignored. Bryce, she said with perfect calm, effective immediately, your contract has been terminated. You'll be escorted from the building. He stared at her, stunned, but Geneva didn't flinch. Security appeared silently at the door, not aggressive, just present. Bryce's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Finally, he grabbed his bag and stormed out, pushing past the quiet faces watching him go. No one said goodbye. Tisha turned back to the room. Her voice softened. This isn't about punishment. This is about redesign. She took a deep breath. We're not just going to be a recruiting agency anymore. We're going to build the gold standard for equity-first hiring, not just diverse faces on brochures. Real infrastructure. Anonymous resume evaluations, bias-interrupting AI, full transparency in pay band data. We're not fixing one office, we're changing the way companies build teams. Lindsay raised her hand, like a student in a class that finally made sense. Will there be space for people like me, who want to do better, but didn't know how to start? Tisha's smile broke through fully for the first time. Lindsay, there will be no room for anything else. Light laughter filled the room, a release after the storm. The tension lifted, shoulders relaxed. Outside the window, the sun had climbed high, casting full light over the glass facade. As the team began to talk, really talk, Tisha stepped aside to Geneva. You knew something was broken, she said quietly. I did, Geneva replied. but I didn't know what to do until I saw someone challenge it out loud. Tisha looked toward the conference room, where Lindsay and two others were already brainstorming aloud. "You're going to lead this place somewhere good." "I hope so." "You will," Tisha said. Then she turned to leave. As she walked past reception, the new logo had already been installed across the lobby's digital display. Underwood Talent Systems. Rebuilding hiring, rebuilding trust. The front desk clerk, same woman as yesterday, watched her with wide eyes. I didn't know," she murmured. Tisha paused. "You weren't supposed to." She smiled, pressed the elevator button, and stepped in. And as the doors slid shut behind her, the reflection on the metal surface showed her name shimmering across the glass one floor above. The building finally knew who it belonged to.